The way is shut. It was made by those who are dead. And the dead keep it until the time comes. The way is shut.
During the Second Age, after Valinor had disappeared below the waves, the faithful land on Middle-earth, and will soon found the kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor. On a hill in the Blackroot Vale, called the Hill of Erech, Isildur places a great black stone as a sign of his lordship. There, the men who live in the White Mountains swear fealty to him. They promise to aid Gondor, should Sauron return. Years pass, and when Isildur begins to find signs of that he has feared most, he summons the men of the mountains to fulfill the oath they swore. It was not to be, for in secret they had worshipped Sauron as they had done before the coming of the Númenóreans. For this betrayal, Isildur cursed them. Rest they would never find, until their oath was upheld. Isildur's last alliance defeated Sauron, albeit temporarily, and the men of the mountains were forgotten, silently rotting away in their caves. The Second Age ended, the Third began. In the waning days of the northern kingdom of Arthedain, Malbeth the Seer spoke of an heir of Isildur, one who would be driven by great need and tread the paths of the dead. None likely knew then of whom the Seer spoke, and the kingdom of Arthedain fell not long after. 700 years later, the Golden Hall of Meduseld was built in Edoras. To commemorate its completion, Prince Baldur, the grandson of Eorl, the founder of Rohan, vowed to pass the dark door he had found in a small fir wood up in the mountains with his father. Perhaps the words of the old man they had found at the door's threshold did echo in his mind when he entered, but heed them he did not. The old man had died the moment he had finished uttering the words. Baldur never returned.
Stop shit here with.
The Lord of the Rings Online, or LOTRO, is an MMORPG released in 2007 and remains, in my humble opinion, one of the best adaptations of Tolkien's world. In this video I will try to show you the hidden or not so hidden details that make the world of LOTRO so immersive and lively. The Paths of the Dead are a unique location within Middle-earth, where cursed men were doomed to wander for thousands of years, until an heir of Isildur would allow them to fulfill the oath they broke. The story surrounding this location is showcased nearly in its entirety in LOTRO, as you may have seen in the intro. It is a small region, but there are many interesting things to see. In the last video, we left the company at a flooded Isengard, where Merry and Pippin were reunited with Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli and Gandalf. After confronting Saruman, Aragorn meets the Grey Company of Dunedain and elves on the road to Helm's Deep. They relay an ancient prophecy of Maldor the Seer, and a kingly banner made by Arwen. At Helm's Deep, Aragorn decides to take the Paths of the Dead, to muster the strength of the waking dead. Pippin is taken by Gandalf to Minas Tirith after peering into the Palantir, and Merry is left alone with King Theoden, as Aragorn cannot wait for the slow muster of the Rohirrim. The journey of Aragorn and the Grey Company to Dunharrow is unfortunately not recorded in-game. Merry travels with the king for 3 days over passes, dales and streams. They exit a narrow gorge and peer into the Harrowdale, carved out by the Snowborn River. They come to a guarded ford and meet with the Rohirrim who have gathered in the valley. They have put on no lights in their camp, for fear of the winged terror that had passed over them towards Isengard. They rode up a steep road that coiled its way up on the steep rock face. At every turn stood an ancient statue of huge, squat men. Their features had mostly faded, and many only had 2 dark eye sockets that stared at passers-by. The Rohirrim called these the Pukel men, Old English for devil, and Merry gazed at them with wonder and pity. They were carved so long ago that none now knew whom had made them, for they were made before the coming of the Númenóreans to Middle-earth. The Vairian field at the top of the cliff was a great green mountain field of grass. Through it went 2 lines of rough standing stones, which marked the path to the forbidden door. The stones were worn, some were toppled, and others were cracked or leaning down. On either side of the road were clusters of tents, with one big pavilion reserved for Éowyn, the king, and Merry. In-game, Dunharrow is an impressive sight, set between the mountain peaks, and it is modelled very accurately to how it's described in the books. At the back of the Vairian field lies a dark fir wood called the Dimhold. Aragorn and the Grey Company went through it and came upon a dark standing stone in the path, past which they had to lead their horses by hand due to their fright. They came upon a dark door in the mountainside. Dark signs and figures are carved above it, from which fear emanates like a grey vapour. The company enters with their horses, even Gimli, after some introspection. The company walked a broad path through the cavern, lit with torches brought from Dunharrow. As they marched, the dead followed them. The company halts when they see something shimmering in the torchlight to the left of the path. The bones of a man lay there. He wore mail with a gilded hauberk, and his helm and belt were of gold and gilded with garnets. He lay before a black door, still clawing with his bony fingers. There lay the remains of Prince Baldur, preserved by the dry air of the cave. What had led him to that dark door, no one knew. It is possible that he was slain by the last living descendants of the Oathbreakers, who broke his legs and left him to die after sneaking up on him. Aragorn declared to the spirits who watched him that they should keep their treasures. He asked them to let the company pass and then come to the hill of Erech. The torches were blown out as a response, but after many hours they managed to exit the paths of the dead. They had heard water flowing next to them for a while, which leapt out of a doorway and into the black root vale beyond. The Grey Company mounted up and rode towards the hill of Erech, instilling fear in the inhabitants of the valley as they went. Atop the hill, Aragorn addressed the dead. He promised to hold their oath fulfilled after the lands below the White Mountains were cleared of Sauron's evil. Halbarad, who was Aragorn's second in command in the Dunedain, unfurled the kingly standard, showing the white tree with 7 stars on a black canvas. Aragorn was met with silence, and the company slept on the hill. Next morning they would ride out with the dead towards the Pelargir, to eradicate the fleet Sauron was building. As you can see, many of these events are shown in the game. The speech Aragorn gives atop the hill is near a 1-to-1 copy of the lines of the books. After going through the paths yourself, you find footprints of the Grey Company atop Erech, as well as some leftover spirits who have declined Aragorn's offer, and you follow in Aragorn's footsteps. Later in the game, long after Sauron has been defeated, we learn some final details regarding the Oathbreakers. It is not canon, of course, as it has been created by the LOTRO developers themselves and not by Tolkien himself. It's still worth covering though. We speak with the ghost of a foster son of Isildur, Tarandir. He was 2 years old when he fled Numenor with Elendil, though his mother drowned along with his Sauron-worshipping father in the floods. Isildur raised him, and for his foster father he subdued the mountain men. During this conflict he had laid eyes on the daughter of King Riok of the Mountain Men. In secret they pledged themselves to one another at the stone Isildur had placed upon the hill of Erech. Their bond was kept secret, for it was treason. Tarandir left his wife and newborn child for their safety, but slipped them some gold and food from time to time, while his wife upheld to King Riok that his child was the fruit of an union with a mountain man. Their facade came to light after the child was born and grew up with blue eyes and black hair, features of a Númenórean. Enraged, King Riok broke his oath and then was cursed by Isildur. Tarandir spent years in the Númenórean army, and after the Battle of the Last Alliance went to search for his wife and child in the mountains. All he found was bones, their villages empty and abandoned. In the caves up the mountain he found the corpse of King Riok with a sword in his chest. He was chased out by the Oathbreakers and never saw his wife and child again. While this story is not canon, and some of the Oathbreakers may have been actually still alive during the time of the Last Alliance, it gives an interesting background to the decision of King Riok to break his oath. Thus the story of the Oathbreakers in LOTRO is nearly complete from beginning to end, though they have one last battle to fight. Thanks for watching this video. While the Paths of the Dead are quite small in LOTRO, and I do feel the developers could have made a bit more out of them, I did think they merited their own video. I hope to take less time with making the next one, and thanks to everyone who waited for this one. Next we will look at Southern Gondor, an area which I've personally never really explored, so I'm pretty excited about that. See you next time.